if I'm thinking about the kind of what society was like at the time, I'm thinking, well, King James's accession would have created quite a bit of anxiety in society. They didn't know him. They didn't know if he was going to be a good king or not. And people believed in their king or believed in their monarch. Queen Elizabeth was one of the best monarchs to rule, and she changed England. And people, were celebrating her. And then all of a sudden she died. She didn't have an heir. And then it's like, oh, if we don't have a good next king or queen, we could descend into chaos again. So look, Shakespeare was writing this play to show that under a good king or queen, a country will remain stable. So he starts off with a very stable country in the play, and he starts off with King Duncan. He starts off in this way that, everything's balanced, everything's stable. If you have a good king on the throne, you're going to have a good country. This is the point that he's trying to make. And obviously, if he was writing for King James, he wants to celebrate that idea. We're all here because we want to have a good country. We want to respect our king. We want to have some balance in our world. And that's how we begin in this play. We know that King Duncan in the opening is presented as the good king, the benevolent king, the generous king. He rewards his followers. He praises his warriors. This is important because he is the legitimate king at the start of the play. And what I mean by that is he is the one that was chosen by God, and he is doing good things for Scotland. He wants Scotland to flourish. Now, although King Duncan is presented in the opening, we don't actually meet Macbeth. And that's the whole title of the play. We don't meet Macbeth until Act 1, Scene 3. So King Duncan is used to almost build up this momentum, build up this kind of legend about Macbeth. If you remember back to the opening battle, and King Duncan saying, "Oh, he was brave Macbeth, he deserves that name. He's a valiant cousin. He fought for me. He was fighting against, all of my traitors. I couldn't have done it without him." So King Duncan is first of all set up as the stable king, the legitimate king, but then also we trust him from the opening. We can see he is the representation of a good, benevolent, trustworthy king, and he trusts Macbeth at the start. So Macbeth is being built up and built up and built up. He's like got this great reputation by the time he comes onto the stage. He's known as Brave Macbeth. Now that later on changes to Black Macbeth. But at this stage, he is Scotland's hero. He is compared to Bellona's bridegroom. Now, Bellona was the goddess of war. So if he is her bridegroom, he's married in comparison, metaphorically, he's metaphorically married or connected to the goddess of war, which in turn makes him the god of war. He's seen as this legend, this myth, this god, like everybody looks up to him. He's respected by his peers. He's, loved and honored, and people want to be him. People want to be around him. And remember in that opening, when the sergeant or the reporter is reporting on the battle scene to King Duncan, he's saying like Macbeth absolutely smashed it out on that battlefield. And he used his sword, and that sword was smoking with bloody execution. Now, this is important because we can talk about the symbolism of Macbeth's sword at the start. At the start, Macbeth uses that sword to fight for his king, to fight for his country, to fight for justice, to fight against traitors, to fight for loyalty. He's using his violence for good reasons. He's using his violence for honorable reasons. Now that changes later on when he just starts killing everyone. And he's using violence for his own gain. At this stage, He uses his sword for positive reasons. He's fighting for his king. Now, when we finally meet Macbeth, then we start to see that shift, don't we? So he's been set up and set up. He's this myth, he's this legend, he's this beast, he's this god. And then when we first meet him, he's on his way home from battle and he's meeting the witches for the first time. And then we start to see a different side to him. We're meant to like him at the start. We're meant to respect him and revere him at the start. But then when we see this interaction with the witches, we start to think, oh, maybe he's not all good. Maybe he's not this moral figure. We see him and Banquo, who are on the same path at the start of that play. We see them go down two very different paths. Macbeth is the one that's like entranced and, under the witch's spell at the start. The first line that Macbeth speaks in the whole play is, "So foul and fair a day I have not seen." Now, where have we heard that before? The witches open the whole play with "fair is foul and foul is fair." Now, Macbeth is basically echoing that. That's the first thing he ever says on stage. "So foul and fair a day I have not seen." We know he's going to be linked to the witches from that initial moment. It creates this bond that he's going to be linked to chaos, to disorder, to evil, to the supernatural. We like our kind of worldview about him is shattered at this point. He's so invested and entranced by these witches. He starts speaking in imperative language. When they go to leave or vanish, he's like, "Stay, you imperfect speakers, tell me more. I want to know more. Tell me more about my future. I want more prophecies. I want more, information. Stay. Tell me more." He's commanding the supernatural. And the fact that I've underlined this word imperfect on the screen, the fact that he realizes that these witches are imperfect or evil or supernatural shows that he's still got that kind of like thread of morality. Like he knows what he is doing is wrong, but he still does it. And why does he do it? Because they've kind of ignited his ambition. They have like created this fire within him where he's like, "Oh, I could be bigger than I am. I could be king." So that begins to override everything. This is the moment for him. The moment we meet him, his ambition is ignited by those witches and he is on track for a downfall. He submits to that ambition. He loses all sense of morality and he's driven by this. It's hubris. Hubris is pride, excessive pride, believing you are better than everybody. And he's driven by that from here on in. He's like, he's been told by the witches, this is what's going to happen. He puts all of his faith in them. He's like, right, this is going to happen. That's it. Now, Banquo, on the other hand, who's Macbeth's contrast, he acts as a foil meaning complete opposite. He does stay moral. He does do the right thing. Banquo is still ambitious. There's no doubting that. Like, he is still an ambitious character. He still wants a good life for his sons, but he doesn't trust the witches. He calls them instruments of darkness. So we've gone from "stay, you imperfect speakers, tell me more," to no, they're instruments of darkness. They're tools of the devil. They're an evil force that I'm not going to engage with. He's reluctant, he's resistant. He's what Macbeth should have done. He stays on the right path. Now, when we move a little bit further ahead and we see King Duncan praising his warriors after the battle, and pray and talking about how his son Malcolm's going to be the new king, we see that contrast again. This play is full of contrasts. We see Macbeth putting all of his energy into the witches and evil, and then it's contrasted almost straight away in the next scene with King Duncan saying, like, I'm going to reward you. If you stay with me, Scotland is going to be great. If you are loyal to me, I will plant you, metaphorically. I will make you full of growing. If you stay with me, I will create a harvest. He uses all of this agricultural imagery, like all about growth. Stay with me, be loyal, our country will continue to grow. He calls his warriors stars. They're the light of his world. People that are loyal to him shall shine. And look at that word shall. He's so confident. You stay loyal to me, you will shine like the stars in the sky. So we've got this sharp contrast between Macbeth, who's like in the shadows, in the darkness, linked to the witches, to King Duncan, who's just, you know, full of light and love and generosity. King Duncan in this play provides an heir. That's another thing that you could talk about. The fact that he's got Malcolm ready to go. He's primed, ready to be the next king. So again, it's reinforcing that idea that the future for Scotland at this early moment seems stable. And that's what people wanted in society. They wanted stability. They wanted a stable future. And that's what Shakespeare's giving us. He's giving us the ideal, and then he's going to take it all away from us, or Macbeth is going to take it all away from us. At that moment in time where King Duncan is talking about how if they stay loyal, that they will become like stars, and he's talking about the light and the goodness and all of this kind of thing. Macbeth is in the shadows. He actually starts speaking in asides at this moment, which is the structural point. Aside, like away, like a soliloquy, but it's just shorter, on the side of the stage, away from everybody else. And he starts talking about his black and deep desires. Look at the sharp contrast here between shining stars and black and deep desires. And I'd look at these words that, like, in a kind of close way. This is something deep within him. What is he talking about? He's talking about his ambition. He's talking about what he believes is his place in the world. Like, he believes at this point that he's going to be king, and he'll do anything to get there because it's his desire. It's not just a want, it's a desire. He's going to do anything he can to get there. So at this stage, Shakespeare, in the bigger picture, the bigger idea, Shakespeare is trying to test, or trying to warn, I suppose, against ambition. This is where it begins. He's saying, if you are overly ambitious, if you are too ambitious and you're going against the hierarchy, that's going to start breaking down not just his own mind, but also Scotland, also the state. Ambition here is seen as a very negative force. Sophia, do you have to talk about structure as well as language, or can you not mention structure at all? It's not something that you have to do. If you are talking about Macbeth changes from the beginning to the end, that's structure. Okay, so you don't have to be specific. I will just drop in a few things that you could maybe say. But if you're talking about the play as a whole, you are talking about structure. Lucia, does he say that at the same time as Duncan? Yeah, pretty much. So Duncan, I always like imagine like Duncan on his throne, and he's like, you're gonna be like stars. You're gonna have like the best life. Stay loyal to me. And then, yeah, it's almost instant. Macbeth is off to the side, and he's like, I'm gonna need to combat this. I've got black and deep desires. I'll do whatever I can to become king. So yeah, it's a very sharp contrast. Thank you for your questions. Okay, where are we going next? Okay, as I was saying, that Macbeth is always linked to darkness. King Duncan is linked to the light. Macbeth is linked to darkness. This is constant throughout this play. Well, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are constantly linked to darkness. If you think about when we first meet Lady Macbeth and she's calling on the spirits, she asks for darkness. So you can talk about the fact that the Macbeths, husband and wife, are linked in darkness, in the shadows. They want the darkness to cover their crimes. Now, that could also be that they understand that this is immoral. They understand that what they're doing is wrong. But again, they're led by their ambition, and that ambition becomes the most dominant force in their lives and destroys them. We know that Lady Macbeth starts to reject everything that makes her weak. When we first meet her in the beginning, she's calling on the spirits, unsex me here, make thick my blood, fill me with poison. You know, she's ready to go in the opening of this play, and she rejects everything that makes her weak. She believes that being the feminine, okay, being a woman, having feminine qualities makes her weak. So she rejects all of that. She wants to push that away. I don't want to feel. I don't want to feel remorse. I don't want to feel guilt. I don't want to feel weak. So she ultimately, what she is doing and what Shakespeare's proving is she is the one that begins to disrupt the natural order. Women at this time were meant to have a sense of restraint. They were meant to hold back. They weren't meant to be going out, planning to kill people. So we've got this idea that she is disrupting that order already from the start, from the minute we see her. Yes, Grace, she's begging to the supernatural. She's linked to the supernatural. The first moment we see her, she's calling on the supernatural. That tells us something. The first time we see Macbeth, he's linked to the witches. The first time we see Lady Macbeth, she's calling on the supernatural. She's linked to the supernatural as well. So already we are starting to see there's a break in the structure. They're beginning to disrupt the natural order. And Lady Macbeth very quickly becomes the driving force or the catalyst behind the regicide, behind the whole play. Nothing would happen without her. I don't believe Macbeth would have gone through with anything unless she was that one telling him, look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. She tells him, walk into that room and put a mask, a facade on your face. But underneath, you're going to strike like a serpent. And they're constantly, the Macbeths are constantly linked to animalistic imagery, anything that creates venom or poison, serpents, anything that's linked to temptation and evil, the fall of mankind. They are literally destroying, or metaphorically, I suppose, destroying mankind in the play. I've said here that she weaponizes his masculinity. Now, Lady Macbeth very quickly realizes that she cannot gain power. She cannot be queen unless she uses her husband like a weapon. And this is also a context point. Women, could not have power in the same way that men could. So she knows that she needs to use or weaponize her husband in order to gain the crown that she so desperately wants. I would argue that she's more ambitious than her husband. I would argue that she wants that crown. She wants to be queen more than Macbeth. This idea that she calls it the golden round, the crown that she wants, and she's never had power and now is her chance.